First speaker of this next session is Monica Haga. I'm told if I mispronounce that, it says something incredibly rude in Swedish, so I hope I've got that right. But Monica has a 17-year international professional career, specializing in safety and health, of course. And her speciality, she considers, is the ability to bridge safety science into user-friendly tools and practical approaches. Her recent work has focused on organizational transformation and resilience capacity building. A stellar CV, as you can see, and a very well-renowned speaker. So I'll shut up and hand the floor to Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the wonderful play we had before. I really enjoyed it. I love when it's more interactions. But today it would be less interactions. And thank you, Espen, for inviting me once more. Last time I was here 2018, and I was talking about Fukushima. I hope this is the last time I'm talking about nuclear accidents, and maybe something more positive next time. Anyway, I have been very interested about the part which comes in with the resilience thinking. I know Eric Halnagel was here last year. You also have Jean Perrier talking to you and other people knowing resilience. I think that we can learn a lot from this little bit different type of thinking. The way I take on it is from a social psychologist point of view, so I'm more human-centered. So I wouldn't say I'm a resilience engineering specialist, but I like the ideas and it inspires me a lot in my work. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for transformational change that I think we all feel. And then I'm going to talk about leadership in general, about Chornobyl, and I use the Ukrainian word Chornobyl. And I will try not get into the politics. Let's see how well I will do about that. The other one I will talk about is, of course, leadership for resilience. And I hope I will have some time to talk about the how before Tim is kicking me out. He told me, if you're too long, I will drag you out of the stage. Okay, so let's go. So I would say today we have a situation that of a lot of uncertainty, and it seems like, at least my feeling is that things are changing rapidly. Things that we never thought of is just coming to us globally. Who could ever think a pandemic could do what it did with us the last years? That cities, towns, people had to stay home, there were shutdowns, and governments were not prioritizing economy, financials, and others. They were really trying to protect people and health and safety of the people, which for me was, wow, is this really happening? Of course, I was not enjoying not being able, working through teams, but I think that was very good for me, showing the value in society in general. So there is a lot of change going on. We have the climate change that is knocking on our doors, and we have other unexpected events that is happening. So what could we think about around this? Well, the future looks a little bit changing, and the world is changing all the time. But in our little box, we still have our little more linear ways of thinking, doing things. We are inside a box. And the whole idea, I think, for transformational change is that we need to get out of the box. Our linear way of thinking, our linear way of doing safety and risk assessments, and so on. We need to bring in more creativity, more ways of thinking, resilience, and more dynamic thinking, because that's the reality. Reality is very much about complexity, dynamic, and it's an ongoing. Time never stops, it ticks on. So what we had for 1 second ago is different from today, and I think we all feel it. But be able then to get out of the box and think differently and be brave to take steps out of the box, we do need effective leadership. It starts with effective leadership and it ends with the effective leadership. And that effective leadership, I would say, is embracing people and also building resilience capacity in everyone, not only in pockets. Resilience is something that needs to go through everyone, and between organizations and between people. So a little short about leadership for resilience. And another way of talk about leadership is autocratic leadership. I'm sure you have been, and when I've been researching and doing some studies around resilience and been talking and doing interviews with people, I have heard stories where people have been harassed, they had fear, they had a climate at work that they had to be silent, a silent culture, good news cultures, and so on, because of the leadership. And they didn't want to, even if they knew this is not right, they didn't want to voice because they were afraid. Something will happen to me. It's almost like bullying. I don't want with the one who is bullied because then I get more into risk, and so on. And autocratic leadership is creating that. It's creating a culture of good news when there is an assurance of this is the way it needs to be, only that, my way or no way. The autocratic leadership is also very much firm, and it does allow harassment almost like a tool to put everybody in line, in order. It also is this kind of leadership that is keeping us in the box and is not very resilient. The other way of leadership is the leadership that I think we need more of. And that is when we embrace, when we empower, when we like and welcome crazy ideas, when we are allowing people to try new things, of course in a safe way, and we are listening. You said it before, we need to listen, we need to ask questions, and the leadership is also knowing that I don't know all, so I need to be humble, and I need to learn and listen from others. And there are so many perspectives in a complex system as we are working in, so I need all cues, and I'm here to listen, to learn, empower, and engage people and their intelligence. The persons in different spots in the organizations have a part everywhere where they can contribute and have the best knowledge. We all know that. That kind of resilience leadership creates new ways of operating. And it is that kind of resilience is also finding new creative ways of doing things differently, and also using the team and lead the team to be able to do their best, and allowing the team to do their best as well. I think there is one leader that comes into my mind that is very present today, that is day by day showing and practicing a good leadership for resilience. Anyone here have somebody who they think about? Zelensky. The way he's using drones, the way people really attract, people want to come. We know the Eurovision Song Contest, the singer, he needed to go back and fight. Because I think his leadership is doing all this. Everybody wants to be there and fight together as a strong, strong team. Enough about politics. But I think we will hopefully learn more from what he is doing, and we can embrace that and take it into our way, how we can build more resilience in our organizations. So, again, back to Ukraine. And here it is, 1986. It was in the middle of the night, 1:23 in the night, when this happened. And this is a disaster that should have happened. And we were many people who were affected, many, many people. I want to give you a little bit of context around this. One person that played an important role in the aftermath, but also before, was Valery Legasov. He was the first deputy director at the Krashatov Institute. This institute was the government's, the Soviet Union's, technical support organization. They were the one responsible for the design of the reactors, for the fuel design, and all those things that was giving the basis for the development of the nuclear program in Soviet Union at that time. After the accident, there was a meeting by the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. And this is a quote, what he would have said when he came back after that meeting, 1986. I did not lie in Vienna, but I did not tell the whole truth. And understanding why he was saying so and why he went to Vienna not telling the truth, we need to put it in a context of 1986. I would say, this is my guess, he's a product of a culture. The culture in US was very much what I would say unhealthy power dynamics. You did not share information, especially when the information would bring bad news. There were a lot of cover-ups in the nuclear industry at that time. There were several of smaller accidents have happened, but it was not shared. Nothing was learned. There was also an autocratic leadership style. To be harassed was not unusual. And you need to obey the rules if you want to climb the ranks. And you need to follow, and you need to be a good party leader. If you were thrown out from the party, you did not just lose your membership to the party. You could use your job, your possibilities to bring food to the table for your family. So the culture there would be maybe not the best culture for sharing accidents and health and so on. So that's why I think he was not saying the full truth when he was there. Another angle on this is, as you probably know, that after the accident, nobody shared the information that the accident had happened. They quieted down because of 1st of May. There were going to be a parade in Kiev of the 1st of May, and they didn't want to disrupt that. They knew that the radiation levels were extremely high and dangerous and could harm people, but they decided to continue and have the 1st May parade. Here is another person who is also a product of the same culture. He, Mr. Viktor Bokhanov, he was the plant director of Chernobyl. Chernobyl was the flagship. It was supposed to have 12 units. And they were building the power plants very quickly. The Unit 4 that exploded was it was very new. It haven't been operating for a very long time before it happened. And Krashatov, he knew very little about nuclear, but he was very loyal, and he was known to get things done. He knew how to bend the limited resources to meet endless and unrealistic goals. And he had cut to corners, and he had cooked the books and so on to make it all possible to deliver what he wanted. One thing was that they have detected that the roof of the turbine hall of Unit 4 was actually flammable. And they were supposed to change it, but he was able, because of expenditure and delays and so on, that he didn't want to convince them not to do it and continue the operations of the units and the commissioning. Another important person here is Nikolai Fomin. He was the deputy plant director, and he did not got the approval. That was actually the process for doing this kind of tests that was done in 1986. So he didn't even inform the plant manager about that this was going to happen, this test, and not Moscow. He also, after the accident, ordered the operational engineer, Situnov, to climb up the roof on the unit beside to see if this was really true that the reactor was gone. As you know, a control room looks as a control room do also after a big accident. So they needed to have that confirmed, even though people came in and told them in the control room. He sent up this young guy, and he received a deadly dose of radiation, and he died the 30th of May. And when he was asked in court afterwards about what was the cause of the accident, he blamed the shift supervisor and also the shift operator, Akamov, who said they deviated from the program. So he wanted them to have the blame. Here we have also Anatoly Dyatlov. He was very not often in his office. He's the guy who is everywhere checking and being everywhere to really know that things are running the way it should be. So he was very knowledgeable about the reactor and its operations and his staff. But he was also a product of the same culture. He had no tolerance for strikers who didn't follow his order to the letter. He also wanted everybody to follow him and not questioning anything, regardless if they had a better judgment. I would say a very autocratic leadership style. And Dyatlov believed that his way was always right, and he stubbornly held on to those matters. So this was more of his personality and the way he was in his professional role. That's what is being said about him. And then we have Mr. Alexander Akamov, who was the shift operator. He was clever and competent and very well liked by his colleagues, but he was also known to be really easily pushed one or the other way to obey rules and try to find a way to operate. And we need to remember at those days, the people who worked in the nuclear industry in Soviet Union, they were like kings and queens. They had very good privileges. They had things that the other people wouldn't have. And to go up on your ranks would be something that you invested in striving for in your career from school days. It was something very much achievable and something that will pay off good for your family. We have also the senior reactor operator, reactor control operator, and his name is Toponov. He was very well educated in the university as an engineer, But he had not worked as a reactor operator for long, only 2 months. And he worked with Akamov after the accident, trying to do whatever they can to get coolant into the reactor. And they were standing up on top of their knees in heavily contaminated water and got a dose of 13,000 of millisieverts. Just to give you an idea, a worker in a Swedish nuclear power plant and in many other countries are allowed to receive 20 millisieverts per year. Just to give you some figures to relate to. Of course, he got acute radiation disease and he died the 14th of May. Only 36 years old. Okay, so let us look at what happened in the control room. We have Dyatlov, we have the operator. Remember, this is in the middle of the night, and that's something we know. We don't do these things in the middle of the night because our cognitive functions are not so good. We know that. But they were pushing it because they didn't want to go down during the day because that would impact the energy delivery in the neighboring cities. So Dyatlov was there, and Akamov and Tuponov, the shift operator, the shift supervisor, and the reactor operator, and other people as well. But these three are key in this. So Dyatlov, who knew a lot, you remember, he was everywhere and trying to learn more and more and more about the reactor. So they were going down to do the test, and actually what it was all about was that they're going to run the turbines and to see how much energy it could feed back so they could have control systems in place. So that was the whole idea with the test, and it was a 1-minute test, very short. But they were going to do it when they have 700 megawatt in criticity in the reactor, and that was according to the book and to the rules. But Dyatlov said, no, I want you to go down to 200 megawatts. And Amichov, who is a shift supervisor, very knowledgeable, he knew that this is dangerous because when you are in a lower level of the criticity, this type of reactor was very unstable. So he argued with Dyatlov, but had to obey because Dyatlov said, if you don't do that, I will bring in another operator to do the test. Could you imagine? He doesn't want to lose his job, his privilege, and so on. It's a 1-minute test. So he continued. And then we all know what happened. They got what is called, there were many deficiencies in this reactor type. It doesn't have a containment. It also has what they say is a void, a positive void coefficient. That means when you add coolant, it actually accelerates the reactivity, criticity in the reactor. So when you are trying to break, it actually accelerates. So that was happening, and this is a picture of how the core looks like. I've been on Leningrad nuclear power plant, standing on that kind of RMBK reactor, and it's fine when everything is operating as it should. But this reactor doesn't have a confinement, which all Western nuclear power plants has, to keep if something happens that it's kept in a confined space. So what happened afterwards is that this reactor core just exploded because of the pressure and this positive void coefficient. I've been interviewing and talking to a few people because I wanted to have some real, and because we don't have the possibility to bring them here, I wish we could have Abrovona Vladelena here today. She's a person who is, she has a PhD in psychology. She went to Chernobyl just after the accident. She's been working in the nuclear industry since ever, and she's done a fantastic work. Unfortunately, most of it is in Russian, but there are publications also in English. But she was interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people who were directly in the middle of this mitigation and also the accident itself. And I asked her about what is it that we could learn from this. And here is something that I want you to listen to. It's a little bit long, but I think it's interesting for you.
At first, my goal was to investigate how to behave in a critical situation if you all have good characteristics. But I realized that in completely critical conditions, people have very different ideas about life and about themselves, valid for each and every person. Perceptions about oneself and about what is actually happening, they change a lot in such circumstances. They can totally change. And most of all, we observe that these terrible conditions relate to the motivation of a person and his attitudes. The reality of the situation creates motivation and attitudes. I had to quickly compose a relationship questionnaire, and I made it to determine the characteristics of people's motivation and psychological attitudes in relation to what happened to them and what happens in reality. And very interesting things turned out. It turned out that this motivational sphere, as it were, strengthened those professionally important psychological qualities that, in principle, are very important for the successful work of a person. It turned out that under normal conditions, a person works like everyone else. If a person under normal conditions does not succeed in some way, he does not achieve success, then he simply leaves nuclear energy. He either quits himself or is fired. In those critical conditions, positive qualities simply bloom. They simply become in demand, and a person does not just demonstrate them, they're shown to a greater extent, to a greater extent than usual. And vice versa. Negative qualities, they become unbearable to others, and the person himself feels it and tries to get away somewhere. I would like to say that the staff who were in the accident, they had an almost family relationship with all those who happened to be there too. This experience of one tragedy, one for all and all for one, it has united people. And all these circumstances were aggravated by these dose loads. Thus, a person burns out and is forced to leave. So, what did they do? They left a dosimeter in the camp, the one that they had to carry in their pockets, and went without it, so that they would not be taken out of the zone, and their doctors would take them out. In general, it was very scary. Really scary, because people then didn't know what they should do. There is no plant, no workplace. Their profession is associated only with nuclear power plants. They all received professional training there. What will they do next? How will they live? How will they earn and support a family? Where will they live?
So what she was saying was that people were willing to sacrifice their life for their family, for their colleagues, and we have seen it also happening in other accidents, how people being extremely heroic. We learned the same when Fukushima happened. People walked kilometers and kilometers back to the plant to help, and they didn't know if they would come back, and so on. I think this is a true feature of resilience, when you are able to create that kind of unity and that you could work under such extreme conditions together in such a motivated way. So there was a lot of bravery. I've been talking to other people, also colleagues in the nuclear industry, who was there at the time, a friend from Armenia. He was there just after in May as well, and he saw a young guy sitting, because it was very hot, and he was sweating, and he was sitting on a piece of the reactor. He didn't know, the young soldier, what he was sitting on. And my colleague saw it, and he said, "Don't sit there, move quickly. This is so contaminated." They didn't have information about the radiation levels, and they didn't have, a lot of people who were there mitigating didn't have the right information about how to protect themselves, unfortunately. But there was a commitment to mitigate for sure, and as Vladilena was saying, extreme solidarity. We also have Nikolai Steinberg. He was originally from Chernobyl, but were working at another nuclear power plant when it happened. And when he learned about it, he was one of those who went there as a chief engineer, and to help to find out ways how they could mitigate with the accident. I interviewed him as well, and here is a clip of what he's saying.
Серьезной аварии, катастрофы по одной причине.
There is, when we have a big accident, there is not only one problem happen. Reason. There is not only one reason.
As usual, all catastrophic situation created by many very small mistakes, deficiencies, and some of them could be collected during the many, many years. And when you collect critical mass, a critical number of these deficiencies, you could receive catastrophic catastrophe.
So he's saying that all those small things that we don't attend till daily, those are the things that build up and finally come together as these catastrophic events. That's one of his lessons to be learned. He also said everybody, and Vladilena was saying the same, everybody in the system has a responsibility to take. So I want to share what happened also from the international arena. As you are using the term of safety culture, you maybe already know that it was coined because of the accident of Chernobyl. Before that, we had the 80s boom of organizational culture, and probably they were influenced by that way of thinking. But anyway, the IAEA formed what they call an International Nuclear Safety Advisory Group, INSAG, and gathered together experts and people from Russia. And here was the Legashov, where he was not saying the full truth in this meeting about what actually happened. But anyway, they found out this is not only about the technology, it's more than that. And so the word was, safety culture came along. And as you can see here from one of a quote of the books here, that a vital conclusion is that the importance of behavior and how that is managed is as important as other parts of safety. There is 91, this book, this INSAG group was defining what safety culture means. And It says that safety culture is the assembly of characteristics and attitudes in an organization and individuals which establish an overriding priority. The overriding priority that the nuclear plant issues receive the attention warranted by their significance. That's the first one. It's changed today to be general safety, because we talk about personal safety, security, and other things. So the IAEA have changed the definition a little bit about safety culture since this. But anyway, then because of not revealing all the truth, they had a new meeting some years after, and here you have the updated version. And here they were seeing that now the flaws of the design and also that they didn't share, and the blame on the operators were also lessened. After the Chernobyl accident, the shift operator and the reactor operator was sent for prison for 10 years, but then they actually shortened that later on. Here is the sarcophage that they very quickly were building to cover the plant, and that was leaking and not very sealed. So some years after a big project that was funded by the Western countries to build a confinement to keep all the activity closed in that space. But interesting maybe to know that the Unit 3, which is just beside, and the Unit 1, 2 was also operating. Unit 3 was closed and shut down 2000. I think you have seen these pictures before. There are a lot of pictures of Pripyat, the atomic city just beside the Chernobyl. And you could see the sadness of people just leaving their homes very quickly and were never able to come back. Of course, they can come back today, but nobody can be there. So it's very, very sad when all these things happen. And I would say when you don't have a good power dynamics, it can go really out of hands. I also would like to say a few words about what is happening today. I reflected on, and I think many in the world did the same, how could those soldiers dig themselves down in the red forest just beside the plant, where you have signs that here is radioactive hotspots in this land? And not only that, you wonder, did they really have the information needed to avoid that contamination? Even if it's not high doses, but some of these, if you get it inside your body, it can harm you still significantly. The IAEA Director General Grossi, he also been very active trying to help both the shift people that you know at Chernobyl that couldn't leave the plant. They were working day and night under distress, and also at other plants where they have taken people from the Russian nuclear industry, senior technical staff, to take the lead. And that, of course, also could interfere with the regular operation commands on the Ukrainian plants. And also, of course, create friction in the decision-making. Could you think of that, having somebody else from another country coming in and so totally say that, no, you're going to do this, and we are the one who is going to tell you how you are going to operate? That's been happening, and DG Grossi from the IAEA have been instrumental trying to do something around this. So we would like to listen very shortly also about Nikolai again here.
Ну, прежде всего, я думаю, что надо уметь слушать человека Надо пытаться понять его.
First of all, I think the most important is to know how to listen another person. We need to know how to understand another person.
Это тяжело. Я тоже не подарок, я тоже не всегда слушаю.
Sometimes it's difficult, and we're all different, but we need to do it. We need to understand each other and be patient to each other.
Это сложно. Это сложно.
And it is difficult.
Я не очень хорошо разбираюсь в людях.
I don't really know and understand other people.
Но я считаю, что нельзя сразу принимать решения. Но когда я вижу, что человек не такой, то я с ним закрываю отношения.
I think first you should always give a chance to another person. But when I see I don't like something about this person, I close myself and it's over.
So he's saying that it's so important that we have good relationships and that we really listen to each other. That's one of his biggest lessons to be learned from being in the aftermath of this kind of accident, and of course talking to all his colleagues that was there at the same time. So I would like to simplify this a little bit, and I think I like this concept of shared space, and that is really about paying the attention about what happens in between people. Very often we are focusing on the other or myself, but we don't think so much about what's happening between us. And we take a little of a second to reflect about that. If we really pay attention to it, we could share much more. If we listen, if we ask questions, and so on, then we could share much more and be much more intelligent together. This means that you need to lower your ego factor, empower others, be curious, and so on. So if you don't have a good shared space, you will be in silos. You even maybe will polarize views, and so on. But the closer we get to each other, the better. And if we get really close and have really good, tight relationships, we know that this can help. A short story of what happened in a clinic in a hospital. There's a person that I interviewed. She is a specialist in gynecologist, and she was on call at the hospital, and a mother came that was going to deliver. And the doctor at the other clinic, because she was on the main hospital, and where she was going to deliver, they were holding back and trying to help her, but they couldn't help her enough. So they sent her very, very late in the stage. And when she came in, the doctor saw that I have seconds before I will lose both the mother and the child. And she saw the anesthesia doctor that came along with her, and she knew we will manage, because they were working seamless together. So while they were running to do the cesarean, they were actually putting her down so they could do what they needed to do, and they were able to save both the baby and the mother. Because they knew and they trusted each other. They had a very good shared space, and what Edgar Schein would call the deepest level of emotional, intimate, total, mutual commitments. They didn't have to speak because there were no time to speak in this very urgent situation. And this, I would say, is what we would like to strive in our companies to create, that kind of relationship when you could share not only emotions, when you also can share what you really, really think and your crazy ideas. That's the opportunity to transform, to think differently out of the box when we can do that. So shared space is characterized by all these things. And a very important factor is that we have bigger ears than mouth, that we really listen to others and are curious about what other things. Because we are humble, we know that I only know a little piece, others know much more than I know. So what leader can do to do this, they can be trustworthy by walking the talk, really not just saying lip service, really doing what they need, demonstrating honesty, be clear in their communication and mindful and sensitive, checking in with people and so on. Be respectful, but also not afraid to take act when there is a misalignment in behaviors. I see often managers doesn't want to do that because it's uncomfortable, it's touchy to do that. But managers do have that role as well, and that's also important for fostering resilience. They need to be humble and listen to all those different perspectives and invite that kind of conversations and forums. And spark dialogue rather than discussion and argumentations. And be authentic. I think that's an important factor to attract also younger generation. They are very quickly could see, do you really mean what you say, or is it just what you say? And in general, I think we need to create cultures that is attractive for younger generations, so they want to come and work with us. So we are bringing in the talents that we need for transformation and for the future. So, a little bit about the resilience. So it takes a long time to build this. It doesn't happen overnight. And resilience is not just you could push on the bottom and there it is. This is something leaders need to practice every day. And we have created, the 2EC have created a little fun tool that we would like to share with you after in the break, if you want. So I have Sonja Haber here, and I also have Evelyn Ayompe here, and we have a dialogue table over there. So come and speak with us, and we can talk more about the how, and also test your personal leadership for resilience. It's a quick test, takes a few minutes, but come and do it. We also have an app available for those who want to do it on the phone. And there is much more to share. Just want to say that Sonja Haber is one of the 2EC experts. You visited all the nuclear power plants during the 90s, and she knows a lot more about the Soviet and the culture and so on, if you're interested, and other things as well. So just a few words. Tim, I know, I see the clock here. So I just wanted to say a few words about the very simple way of how we could use this idea of work as done and work as planned. One way is that the leader will have a conversation when they work and trying to plan the work, that they will ask the employee, how are you going to plan and do and reach that goal? And asking questions, and instead of telling. So when they are going out of the boundaries, it's the leader to ask questions, humble inquiry questions. So what do you think will happen though? And then they will come back on track again, and maybe they have another idea that also will go out of the boundaries. Then again, it's the leader to actually ask, again, humble inquiries to get the person into this, the loop here. So they will ask the questions, humble inquiry, to get them on track there. And then you have the agreement of the plan. This is how we are now going to do. And the employees, this is how I want. And the leaders say, yes, this is good. And then on the way, when the work is done, the person might be almost outside the boundaries. Then it's not the place, I would say, to tell, it's to ask questions. What could happen now? Stop. What could happen now? Or could you say how you're thinking now? To get the person again back on track. This is a very tricky part, because very often we want to go in and direct. Don't do that because of. But if we instead turn it to questions, we really can build resilience. And if we do that, we have afterwards a reflection about work as planned and work was how it was done. And if we give the little time there to reflect, we have so much to gain to build resilience, because we are adapting all the time. Small, unexpected things happen that we can learn from on success. So just a very short idea about how this can be done to fostering resilience. And I'm going to skip this one. And I believe very much that what we learn here in safety science and elsewhere, we need to compile it to very simple tools that can be used and integrated into daily work. I think that is the way to transform and help the industry to both gain more resilience, but be more innovative, so we will have a safe and viable future. I will give you the presentation afterwards, but here's a few sets of different type of tools that can be used. Just an idea. There are hundreds of other tools, but just a few to show you. So what is it that we can learn? Well, accidents are the same, doesn't matter where, in which industry, because it comes down to the human and the organizational factors. And I've been working around the world in many different cultures, and we are very much the same. So if we focus on the human and the organizational part, we can leverage this a lot more. And transformation is a we work. It's not the leader, it's not somebody external, it's something that we do together. It's throughout the organization. And we need resilience to be able to respond to the unexpected parts. Whatever that is, it could be a smaller event. It doesn't have to be bigger events as disasters, as a Deepwater Horizon or so on. And leaders need to practice this as part of how they practice, of course, leadership. So a few questions that I will leave you with. This is, how can you use shared space in your current role? How can you contribute to transformational change? And how can you get the others on board? And this is not rocket science, this is social and behavior science that really could leverage to be much more resilient, so we have a safer and a more viable business. Thank you so much, and thank you also to those behind that have been helping up with this. Thank you for listening.